Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. I woke again to the hiss of the radiator, but this time it didn't sound like pipes. It was whispering. Low, soft, almost coaxing, as if it knew my name. I pulled the threadbare blanket tighter around my shoulders and forced my eyes open. The room smelled like damp plaster, stale cardboard, and that faint, unplaceable scent of cat piss that had clung to my apartment since the day I moved in. I didn't own a cat. Nobody had lived here before me. I'd asked the landlord once, and he had shrugged. Old building, smells stick. But lately, I wasn't sure if it was just the apartment, or if it was me. I am 26. That detail doesn't matter much except that it feels too old for my failures and too young for this creeping, hollow loneliness. 3 months ago, I was a dispatcher. Now I moved boxes at temp warehouses, pet sat for women going through divorces, and sold old things for gas money. My life had become a string of silences. Applications sent, never answered. Phone calls never returned. 100 attempts to exist in a world that no longer noticed me. Every morning I woke to a quiet that felt like it had been stitched into my skin overnight. A quiet that made me question if I even existed anymore. It was on one of these nights, hunched over my dented kitchen table, the only light from my laptop casting cold, sickly blue shapes across the walls, that I typed in the words, "Ways to make money fast," like a prayer. I didn't know I was opening the door to a different kind of danger, one that didn't wait for physical entry. The thread I clicked was innocuous enough. Side hustles that actually work. Someone named Broken Boston posted about secret shopping. Easy, legit, fun even, they said. It sounded like salvation, or at least distraction. The Craigslist ad they linked read, "Seeking mystery shoppers, Ohio, flexible hours, must have access to email and reliable transport, payouts $35–50 per shop, immediate openings." It smelled like a scam, the way desperation smells when it crawls under your skin, but I clicked reply. 30 minutes later, Denise Weston, a Gmail account but written formally enough to pass as professional, replied with instructions. Fill out your schedule, your PayPal, a few contact details, submit, get paid. Nothing up front. Immediate start. I did it. I filled it out. I hit send. I sat in silence for a long time, staring at the screen like it might rewrite my life. The next day, Denise sent me my first assignment, Mayfair Market, a quiet strip in the suburbs 15 minutes away. Aisle 4, canned goods. Observe employee. Ask about canned tuna. Submit checklist within 2 hours. Bold letters. You must remain anonymous. Do not reveal your identity. I remember walking in that night, hood drawn, shoulders hunched. The store smelled like disinfectant and overripe bananas, and the air was thick enough that I felt it in my throat. I spotted Miles, the employee, a pale man with stringy hair and bloodshot eyes. He moved mechanically, sliding cans onto shelves like he'd forgotten he was alive. Middle of the aisle, left side, he muttered without looking. No greeting, no acknowledgement. I tried to fill the void. Thanks. You too, I said weakly. And then I noticed it. Something in my chest tensed, the hairs on my arms standing. He was everywhere, but not moving. Across the aisle, by dairy, produce, watching, half hidden, just waiting. By the time I reached checkout, I was sweating. Amber, the cashier, smiled at me brightly, scanning my items. Her presence was a relief, a reminder that maybe I wasn't being hunted. But as I stepped outside, hood damp with stress sweat, a shadow passed across my windshield. Miles. He didn't look at me, but the air around him seemed to hum, vibrating, almost wrong. He walked with a tight, frantic energy, disappearing into a black sedan, tires screaming. I drove home in silence, shaking, stomach twisting. The next morning, $40 arrived via PayPal. My next assignment followed, and I didn't think much of the shadow that seemed to linger in the edges of my vision. Until 3 nights later, at Jesse's apartment, curled on his plaid couch, eating chicken from takeout boxes and letting Mako, his mutt, twitch and snore beside us. The apartment was warm, safe, or so it felt, until the bam against the door, hard enough to vibrate through the floorboards. Not a knock, not a tap. A fury that made my stomach drop. We peeked through the blinds. Miles. Same hoodie, hollow eyes, but now almost wet, translucent, like something had hollowed him from the inside and left a trembling shell. He muttered, fists pounding the porch. "I know what you did. You ruined everything." "Call the cops," I whispered. By the time the police arrived, he ran. One officer tackled him. A folding knife was recovered from his waistband. My knees went weak. The detective later told me. His real name, Brandon Miles Henley. Mayfair employee for 2 years. Probation history. Secret shopper report stacking. Girlfriend left him. Rent overdue. Car failed inspection. My report had been the tipping point, but it doesn't explain how he found me. I had used a burner email, no phone, no name. Yet he had come. And the air in the apartment had felt different in his presence. Heavy. Warm, but wrong. In the weeks that followed, I tried to convince myself that it was over. I didn't take another assignment. I moved. Jesse installed cameras. Safe. Mostly. But the shadows remained. At the grocery store, I catch someone stocking shelves, hollow-eyed, tired, and I feel it. Watching. Sometimes the radiator hisses in a way that mimics breathing. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see Miles moving at impossible speeds, always just at the corner of my vision. And I know it's not him, not really. Because I remember the laptop, the checklist, my fingers tapping the keys, documenting his failures. The words I wrote, precise, cold, methodical. I wonder if they summoned this, not Miles. Something else? Something born from my own desperation, my own need to exist, to measure and judge. And late at night sometimes, when the apartment is still, I hear my own voice whispering from the vents. It's not personal. It's just the numbers. I pull the blanket tighter. The radiator hisses. The shadows crawl along the walls and I feel them pressing in. Watching. Waiting. I wonder if I'll ever be alone again. I tried to sleep that night, but the apartment had changed. The shadows felt thicker, almost solid, pressing into corners that had once been empty. The radiator hissed again, but now it sounded less like metal and more like someone breathing, slow, deliberate, counting me in. I pulled the blanket over my head, but the warmth did nothing. I could feel something beneath it, waiting, patient. Days blurred. I kept my routine, tried to convince myself I was safe. Grocery stores, the streets, Jesse's apartment, all felt normal, but I couldn't shake it. The sense of being watched had become a pulse inside my own body, not just something outside. I noticed subtle things, the smell of my apartment changing, something sour but not the cat piss, like iron mixed with old smoke. The laptop sometimes flickered while I typed, keys registering the wrong letters, sentences bending before I could correct them. Words I hadn't written would appear. It's not personal, it's just the numbers. I began avoiding reflections, mirrors, windows, even spoons. I didn't trust my own eyes anymore. My phone buzzed with harmless notifications, yet I flinched at every vibration. Every shadow across the floor was Miles or whatever he had become lurking. One evening I went back to Mayfair. Not for the assignment, not officially. I told myself it was curiosity. But I think part of me wanted to confront the source of my terror, to see him, to prove it was only a man and not the manifestation of my guilt. The store smelled the same, bananas, disinfectant, but it felt heavier, almost breathing, like the air itself had learned to watch. Miles was there, or a version of him. Hollow, pale, eyes like empty sockets. He didn't move naturally. He seemed to glide just beyond the floor's reflection, slipping through aisles silently. When he noticed me, The edges of his form blurred like static on a broken TV, and I felt the first real jolt of panic in weeks. I stumbled back, heart hammering. My hands shook so badly I dropped my phone. When I picked it up, the checklist I had submitted weeks ago glowed faintly on the screen, words twisting. You wrote it. You judged him. You summoned this. I ran from the store, gasping, skin prickling. The car was where I'd left it, or maybe it wasn't. Headlights flickered across the parking lot in impossible angles, shadows stretching like hands trying to grab me. I locked the doors, fists tight on the wheel, and didn't breathe until I was blocks away. By the time I got back to Jesse's, I wasn't just anxious. I was unraveling. The apartment greeted me with familiar smells, yet now they seemed alien, sour and metallic. The radiator hissed in rhythms I could understand. Counting, clicking, a language of accusation. My hands shook as I typed at the laptop. The words I wrote were no longer my own. Every report, every note I had filed, felt like it had been used as a tool to build something malevolent, something I had invited in by judging, by participating in a system that consumed people. Sleep didn't come. Dreams were worse. Miles, or the thing he had become, was everywhere. In the back of my car, under my bed, standing in the corner of the living room, impossibly tall, impossibly still. Sometimes in the dream, I wrote on my laptop, and the screen bled black. My hands melted into the keys, typing not words but screams. When I woke, the keyboard was normal. Nothing had changed. And yet, the whispering persisted. It's not personal. It's just the numbers. I avoided mirrors, avoided windows, avoided myself. Jesse noticed. "You're not sleeping," he said gently one morning, worry lining his face. "You're seeing things." I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because what I was seeing wasn't him. It was me. My actions. My judgment. My cruelty. One night I sat on the floor in the dark, knees tucked to my chest, laptop open in front of me. The blank screen glowed dimly, casting a sickly light across the apartment. I typed my own name, just to see if the keys would betray me. They did. On the screen appeared a single line. "You are him now." I screamed. Not loud enough to wake Jesse, not loud enough for the walls to carry it. Just a small, ragged sound, swallowed immediately by the apartment, and then the shadow moved. Not Miles, not a man. Something darker, deeper, rising from the corners, bending the air, alive with my guilt. The next day I tried to leave, tried to go anywhere that wasn't under the weight of this creeping entity. But every street, every store, every neighbor's yard felt wrong. I passed a Mayfair billboard, and Miles's face flickered in the peeling vinyl, mouth opening and closing without sound. I blinked. It was gone. I blinked again. It was there. Always there. Always waiting. Jesse begged me to see someone, a therapist maybe, something real. But I knew it wasn't real in the way they understood. It was inside me, built from my choices, from my cold judgment, my cruel report that had ended a life. Not his life exactly, but the version of him I had made with my words. And now that version had grown, consumed reality, and become autonomous. Late at night, I hear it most. The radiator hisses, the floors creak, and in the silent spaces I hear the typing. Keys clicking, letters bending, words forming accusations. You summoned this. You crossed the line. Sometimes my own voice joins in, whispers through the vents. It's not personal, it's just the numbers. And I realize, with absolute horror, it's me, my own voice, my own judgment, my own cruelty, alive and waiting to punish me. Jesse installed cameras at the apartment, safe, mostly. I check them obsessively, though I know it doesn't matter. The shadow is everywhere, or it will be if I let it. The reality outside, the world where police arrest Miles, where my actions seem measured, doesn't matter. The world inside me, the world I built with my fear and judgment, is alive, watching, waiting. I don't take assignments anymore. I don't write reports. I don't judge. I barely leave the apartment. Yet sometimes when I step into a grocery store, I catch someone stocking shelves. Hollow-eyed, pale, movements too slow, too precise. I feel the pulse again, the unnatural weight of expectation and watching. I flinch, even though it isn't real, and whisper to myself, "Not now. Not here." Sometimes I look at the laptop, keys glowing faintly in the dark, and I know. I created this. The cold efficiency of my fingers, my desperate need to exist in a world that ignored me, fed something that learned to feed on me in return. Miles, the man, is gone, or in jail. But the entity, the thing that emerged from my own guilt and cruelty, it is not gone. It is me, and I am it. And at night, when the apartment settles and the shadows stretch long across the walls, I hear it again. Whispering, patient, in my own voice. It's not personal. It's just the numbers. I pull the blanket tight, close my eyes, and pray it will end. But deep down, I know better. Because I am still typing, and it will never stop. I didn't think anyone would notice me. Not really. At 30, a month postpartum, sleepless and stitched together by exhaustion and baby formula, I had become the kind of invisible you only feel when someone calls your name too softly. Life had a way of narrowing you down to survival, changing diapers, scraping together enough cash to keep a roof over our heads, and convincing yourself the world hadn't moved past you. The Craigslist ad caught my eye the way desperation does. Sharp, immediate, promising a little relief. Child care needed Saturday evening. 2 boys ages 6 and 9, $120. Message for address, laid-back household. Chloe M. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the reply button. 2 boys. That phrase knotted something in my chest. Not because I feared children, but because I remembered, painfully, the nights I hadn't slept through my own baby's cries. The helplessness. The sense that no matter what you do, you're failing. That vulnerability felt like a crack, and this ad glimmered over it, offering me purpose, control, cash, anything that might remind me I was more than a frazzled mother. I messaged her. "Hi, I saw your ad. Available Saturday evening, experienced with kids." The reply came fast. "Thanks so much for responding. My husband and I will be out just after 5:30. The boys, Isaac and Dylan, are very easy. Dinner is handled. TV, board games, maybe a book before bed. Quiet night." I laughed nervously at the smiley. Human, I told myself. The words didn't set off any alarms, just regular people. But my gut, the thin line between exhaustion and intuition, twitched. I did my homework anyway. 1585 Brookfield Lane. Quiet cul-de-sac, older houses, nothing screaming danger. I sent Emily the address. "Text me when you get there," she said. "And if it feels off, just leave. No questions." Saturday evening was humid, air sticky in a way that made your skin crawl. I parked on the cracked driveway at 518. The house was a faded blue, paint peeling in long, curling strips. The lawn was half dead, overgrown, and the wind chimes on the porch clinked even though the air was still. The porch light flickered on and off, lazy, uneven, like it was breathing. I knocked. Nothing. Knocked again. A shuffle behind the door. It opened slowly. He was wrong. Late 50s, maybe 60. Gaunt, gray hair, wild beard patchy. He squinted at me like a puzzle he didn't want to solve. "You the babysitter?" he asked, voice thick and dry. "Yeah, Chloe said around 5:30. I offered, trying to keep my voice steady. Right. She went out with the boys for snacks. Be back in 5. You can come in." The wind chimes gave a soft, eerie clang as I stepped inside. Inside, it was worse than I expected. Dust coated every surface, thick in the air. A sour, almost coppery smell clung to the walls. Piles of yellowed newspapers, boxes stacked in odd towers, one threadbare recliner facing a TV that hadn't been on in years. Not a single toy, No backpacks, no crayons, nothing that hinted at life. "Sorry for the mess," he muttered, shutting the door behind me. The click of the lock hit hard against my chest. "No worries," I said, forcing a smile. My eyes darted to the hallway. "I'm just waiting for Chloe." He nodded vaguely toward the hallway. "Living room's back there. Couch, TV, feel free." I sat, fingers clenching the couch cushions until my knuckles hurt. My phone buzzed. "Emily. You good?" Weird vibe, but okay. Chloe not here yet. Just the husband. The man muttered again as he passed. Should have been back. Bad timing. Each time, a glance toward me, like a predator checking if prey noticed the trap. The house's silence pressed into me. My chest tightened, sweat pricking my temples. The basement door loomed in my peripheral vision, dark and hungry. Mold, damp wood, and something metallic clung to the air like a warning. "Go on," he said, bright and casual. "They're probably just setting up." I froze. Something was wrong. My mind went in circles. What am I missing? I'm being paranoid, maybe just tired. It's fine. It's fine. Actually, my ride's here early. I gotta go. Sorry. He was in front of me before I reached the door. Voice lowered. "Hang on. You haven't even met the kids." I yanked the deadbolt. Click. Adrenaline shot through me. I ran, across the yard, keys slipping from my grip once before catching, heart hammering, chest tight. I didn't stop until I was parked in a grocery store lot 10 minutes away, breathless, shaking. I called Emily, voice cracking. I spilled everything. "Call the cops. Now," she said. Calm, but her words were like ice down my spine. 2 hours later, an officer called. "We'll send someone out. Follow up," he said. That was it. Routine reassurance. Empty, unsatisfying. Weeks passed. I took a temp job at a pet supply store. Stocked shelves, scooped cat litter, smiled at strangers like a woman whose life wasn't being carved away at the edges by fear. Tried not to think about the basement. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Hi there. We saw your babysitting profile online. 2 boys, ages 6 and 9. Saturday evening. $120. Available. Chloe M." I'd never made a profile. My hands shook. I blocked it. 2 days later, another. "Hey, found your ad. Brookfield area. 2 boys. Easy night. $120. Tom and Chloe." I panicked. Changed my number. 3 months later, I left town. Ridgewood. New apartment. New phone. New life. But the fear followed me. Not just memory. Something else. My Instagram, private, my social media, locked tight. Yet every once in a while a text would arrive from unknown numbers. Not threatening. Just watching. Photos of me taken recently from angles only a stranger could get. Sometimes from my front door, sometimes in my car, sometimes, terrifyingly, in the kitchen of my new apartment. I realized something horrifying. The ad wasn't random. It had been made for me. Someone had taken my photo, my life, and folded it into a trap I'd walked into willingly. And now, no matter where I went, it followed. I locked the apartment doors, triple-checked the windows, yet every night, my phone would vibrate with nothing more than a new number and a new photo. They weren't just ghosts of Craigslist anymore. They were inside my life, inside me. And I started to understand. There would be no escape. The nights in Ridgewood were supposed to be safe. My new apartment, small and nondescript, should have been a refuge. But safety had a funny way of bending when your past refuses to stay buried. The first time it happened, I'd just finished putting Eli to sleep, rocking him gently, humming until his tiny chest rose and fell in rhythm with mine. My phone buzzed. A new number. Unknown. I didn't want to look. But some part of me, the part that had always been curious, scared, and tired all at once, did anyway. A single image. It was me. Not the generic Craigslist photo. Me. Standing at my kitchen counter, stirring tea. My hair messy, eyes tired. The timestamp, 2 hours ago. I dropped the phone, ears ringing, chest slamming against my ribs. Eli stirred, tiny fingers curling around my wrist. I whispered, "Shh. It's okay, baby. Mommy's here." Sleep didn't come that night, or the next, or the night after that. Every notification, every vibration sent my stomach twisting like a fist had grabbed it. I stopped leaving the apartment alone, stopped answering unknown numbers, stopped trusting anything that beeped. But they were patient. They knew I was vulnerable. Recent mother, anxious, already edging toward exhaustion. The perfect target. They didn't need to kidnap me physically. The digital world was enough, watching me, feeding on my paranoia until it became a cage I couldn't escape. And then came the texts with the boys. The images weren't of Eli, not directly, but small, insidious hints. A pair of shoes by the door, identical to ones Isaac and Dylan might have worn. A board game set up on my coffee table, pieces scattered exactly how I'd imagined them in Chloe's home. Sometimes I'd blink, and the arrangement would change subtly between notifications. I began seeing patterns where there shouldn't be any, shapes and shadows, figures at the edges of vision. Every cracked window, every dark hallway seemed alive. Emily called after the first week. "You need to go to the police," she said, voice firm. "I did," I whispered, barely above the hum of my apartment fridge. Nothing. They said they'd check, but there's no record. It's like they're ghosts. Digital ghosts can be just as real," she said quietly. Her voice trembled. "I've seen it before." I didn't want to believe her. Yet every beep of my phone felt like the walls themselves were watching. My own reflection became a trigger. I would look in the mirror and see something slightly off in the way my eyes widened or my mouth set. Sometimes it was just sleep deprivation, but sometimes I knew it wasn't. Weeks passed. The texts escalated. Short clips this time. Grainy video of my apartment at night, taken from impossible angles, through walls, from above, through cracks. I couldn't tell if I was awake or dreaming when I saw them. The line blurred. Then one morning I woke to a notification that made my chest stop entirely. A photo of Eli, sleeping in his crib. My arms had been around him only an hour before, and now, the image, timestamp, minutes ago. I screamed, dropped the phone, heart pounding so hard it rattled my ribs. My hands shook, fumbling locks, triple checking the doors. Nothing could explain it. The apartment hadn't been breached, or had it. I didn't want to know. I stopped sleeping in the nursery, slept in the living room, lights on, doors locked, blinds drawn. But they adapted. The notifications came while I was awake, the images creeping into my digital world in real time. Not just surveillance, intimate, personal, inescapable. One night, sitting on the couch, Eli finally asleep in my arms, I saw movement on my phone. A new text, unknown number, no message, just a link. My fingers trembled over the screen. Rationality tried to pull me back. Don't click it, don't click it, don't. But the lure was irresistible, and exhaustion had weakened my resolve. I tapped it. The screen went black, then flickered to life. Grainy feed. My apartment. My living room. I could see myself clutching the phone, staring at the feed. The camera angle matched mine perfectly, as if it were floating in the air, hovering, watching. Then it panned, impossibly, to Eli's crib. My blood froze. The next camera view was of my bedroom, a corner I hadn't seen from this angle. Shadows pooled there. Something shifted. Something moved. And then, my own face. Captured from a hidden lens I didn't know existed, reflected in my horror, mirrored in the feed. I dropped the phone. It landed face up. The feed didn't end. My reflection stared back at me from the grainy digital black. My eyes wide, my mouth open, silent scream. And in that moment, the apartment was no longer mine. No space was safe, no walls held privacy, no locks held meaning. The messages kept coming, the photos, the videos, each one more intimate, more invasive, more insidious. My new life was just another layer of the trap. They had waited, watched, and prepared. Every move I made, every step I thought was private, was cataloged, documented. I began hearing whispers in the apartment. Not real words, but soft, half-formed murmurs in the static of my phone, in the hum of the refrigerator, in the sighs of the air vents. They were inside me, inside my head, shaping reality into fear. I stopped leaving the apartment entirely. I stopped answering calls, emails, notifications. Friends came, worried. I smiled weakly, insisted I was fine. Inside, I was unraveling. My mind became a loop of images, shadows, whispers, and digital eyes. Every reflection, every small movement could be them, watching, always. Then the final text came. Unknown number. No words. Just a link. My hands were shaking, sweat cold on my skin as I pressed it. The screen flickered to life. Grainy. Live. My new apartment. As if they had been inside it for months. The view slowly panned to me. My face, my wide, terrified eyes reflected back from my own phone. Eli asleep in the background, untouched. The cameras moved impossibly. Impossible angles, every inch of my apartment mapped. And then, just me. Full frame, terrified, caught, cataloged. The feed froze. My reflection, alive in the digital world, mirrored in my fear. Then the screen went black. No messages, no texts, nothing. Only the lingering knowledge. I was trapped. Not by walls, locks, or doors. I was trapped in their collection, a specimen, watched endlessly, with no escape. I dropped the phone again, stomach heaving, knees weak. The silence of the apartment was deafening. Not safety, not peace. Just the quiet knowledge that my life had been invaded and rewritten, every move recorded, every fear anticipated. I am not safe. I will never be safe. And in that black screen, I understood fully. They had me. Completely. I should have known from the very beginning that something wasn't right, but denial is its own kind of survival. That's the part nobody talks about. How easy it is to convince yourself you're safe, that what you're hearing, what you're seeing, is just your own nerves. My name is Claire Morgan, 31 years old, and until last fall I thought I had a pretty steady grip on reality. Looking back now, I don't even know if I can trust my own memory of what happened. All I know is that I tried to sell my old car, a faded silver 2006 Honda CR-V, and my life hasn't been the same since. I'd held on to that car for over a decade, through college, jobs, relationships, breakups, and endless moves. It had carried me through the lonely stretches of highway between my hometown and my first apartment in West Grove. And sometimes it had felt like the only consistent thing I could count on. The hood paint had turned that weird, sun-bleached pink, and the air conditioner rattled like a caged insect when you pushed it too hard. But the engine never failed. People sell cars every day. It's supposed to be ordinary. But I learned that ordinary things can open doors you didn't know existed. Or maybe they were always there, waiting. It started simple. I listed it on Craigslist with 10 photos, cleaned it out, priced it honestly. I wasn't trying to scam anyone. I figured someone else could get a few more years out of it. The ad went up on a Thursday afternoon, and Friday morning, I got a text from a number I didn't know. Hey, saw your ad for the CR-V. My name's Tony. Still available? Something about it gave me a flicker of unease I couldn't name. Maybe it was the way his message felt abrupt, like a command more than a question, but I shrugged it off. I needed the car gone, needed the money. I wrote back, "Yep, still have it. Want to come check it out?" His reply came fast, too fast like he'd been waiting. "Yeah, I can swing by tomorrow night after work, around 8:30 or 9. That cool?" 9 at night wasn't ideal, but I told myself not to be paranoid. My apartment complex wasn't bad. Mostly young professionals, single moms, older folks who'd wave to you if you passed. My car sat under a street lamp in the main lot. He wouldn't even need to come near my place. I told him it was fine. He signed off with cool. See you then. T. I couldn't explain it, but the dash at the end of his name made me shiver, like a signature carved instead of written. Saturday night arrived. The crisp edge of fall had settled in, the kind of air that smells like damp leaves, cold iron, and someone's grill smoke drifting from 2 buildings over. People were still out with dogs, hauling groceries, laughing too loud. Ordinary suburban sounds. I tried to let them anchor me as I leaned against the CRV, scrolling half-heartedly through Instagram while keeping one eye on the cars that rolled in. At 8:58 sharp, a black Dodge Charger glided into the lot, windows tinted too dark, moving slow, deliberate slow like it was studying the rhythm of the place. It parked 3 spaces down from me. The driver stepped out, mid-30s, bald, broad shoulders under a black Carhartt jacket, tattoos climbing his forearms. He had that kind of presence that makes people move out of the way without even realizing why. He smiled when he reached me, but it wasn't warm. You selling the CRV? His voice had gravel in it, the kind that comes from too many cigarettes or too many fights. Yeah, I said, forcing steadiness. You, Tony? That's me. He circled the car with slow precision, pulling a small flashlight from his jacket pocket, crouching by the tires, running a finger along the paint as if memorizing it. Been driving it much lately? I explained about the mileage, the timing belt, the receipts. He nodded like he was listening, but his eyes never lingered on me, only on the car. Mind if I look under the hood? Go for it. He peered inside, nodded again, asked about fluids, brakes, maintenance, questions just sharp enough to seem genuine. Then came the line I'd been bracing for. Mind if I take it for a quick spin? I smiled, trying to keep things light. Sure, but I'd need to come with, just for peace of mind. His eyes held mine too long before he smiled again. Yeah, no problem. The moment we closed our doors, silence smothered us. He drove without music, without small talk, his jaw tight, hands rigid at 10 and 2. Streetlights flickered over his face in brief pulses, throwing shadows across his hollow grin. My chest tightened with every block, my brain already rehearsing escape routes. After a few minutes, he finally muttered, "Feels solid." When we returned, he parked cleanly, no hesitation. I stepped out, relief fluttering in my chest. I asked, "So what do you think?" He just looked at me, flat and unreadable. Then, "Yeah, I'll think about it." I was already nodding, already pretending that was normal, when he added casually, "Hey, mind if I use your bathroom real quick before I go?" That's when the air shifted. Not just inside me, around me. The wind died, the street lamp above buzzed and flickered, and I swear the shadows under the cars thickened, swelling toward us like ink in water. My stomach dropped. Yeah, I'd rather not," I said carefully, forcing a half laugh. "Nothing personal. I just don't let strangers in. Hope you understand." For a second, something drained from his face, leaving it blank, empty, wrong. Like a mask had slipped and I'd seen what was underneath. Not anger, not disappointment, but absence. He nodded slowly. "All right, no worries." I waved, turned away, and chose the long path to the front entrance where it was better lit. Every nerve in my body buzzed. Inside the lobby, the citrus cleaner smell hit me sharp, grounding me. I pressed the elevator button, leaned against the wall, tried to steady my breathing. 30 seconds later, I stepped out onto my floor and froze. The stairwell door at the far end eased open. Tony stepped through. My mind scrambled for logic. Maybe he'd taken the wrong stairs. Maybe he'd forgotten something. But no, his walk was deliberate. His eyes locked on me. I turned fast, heading the opposite direction. His footsteps followed, quick, heavy, too close. Panic surged. I bolted through the stairwell door, racing down the steps, heart hammering, lungs tearing. His boots thundered after me, echoing against concrete like a second heartbeat. Down into the garage, my eyes scanned for escape. I veered left, through another stairwell, clawing my way back to ground level. When I burst into the cold night, the air slapped me awake. I sprinted for the CRV, jammed the key in with shaking hands, and peeled out as his shadow stretched across the lot behind me. I called 911 through gasping breaths, gave them his description, his car, everything. Minutes later, red and blue lights flooded the complex. I circled back, parked on the street, shaking so hard I could barely hold the wheel. His Charger was still there. Police found him trying to force open a patio door. He didn't have money, didn't have a license, didn't even have his real name on him. They said he was just another predator using Craigslist as bait. They said I was lucky. But I know better. Because later that night, when I finally managed to sleep, I dreamed of him standing at the foot of my bed, not moving, just watching. His eyes were black, not from tattoos or lighting, but black like void, like an open stairwell that never ends. When I woke, the apartment smelled faintly of citrus cleaner, and on my nightstand, where I always left my phone, was a folded scrap of paper I'd never seen before. One word written in thick, shaky lines: Tony. I never listed anything online again. I stopped using the garage, stopped sleeping with my curtains open. But some nights when the lights flicker and the shadows thicken, I swear I hear his footsteps in the stairwell, always coming closer, always knowing my name. And I wonder, did I ever really escape him? Or did I just let him in without realizing it? I always thought my curiosity would save me. Curiosity was the backbone of my life, the thing that made me feel sharper than other people, safer, because if you saw the shadows first, you had a chance to avoid them. That was the logic I clung to when I was 25 and thought being a journalist was going to matter. When I was writing breathless, late-night blog posts about unsolved murders and small-town scandals, chasing stories like a hound, convinced my instincts would protect me. Even after I quit, after editors stopped taking my calls, after I couldn't convince myself that anyone cared about my stories, I still believed I could sniff out danger better than most. That's the lie that landed me in the worst place of my life, the kind of place where instincts mean nothing, where you learn you're just another mouse wandering willingly into someone else's trap. By then, my life was simple. Boring, maybe, but stable. I worked nights at a roadside hotel just outside of town, the kind of budget chain that smelled like mildew soaked into the drywall and burnt coffee cooked into the counters. A way station for truckers, families on the road, couples who wanted to be unseen. My shifts bled together. The rattle of old vending machines, the hum of the desk fan, the glow of the security monitors throwing pale light onto my skin. I told myself I liked it, and in some ways I did. It gave me cover to be alone with my thoughts, to pretend my solitude was a choice. After midnight, it felt like the world forgot about us. No traffic, no noise, just me, fluorescent buzz, and silence so thick it pressed on my chest. But silence is never empty. It breathes, it scratches, it waits. That's when I'd scroll Craigslist. Not seriously, just habit. Old instincts. It wasn't the apartments or the jobs that got me. It was the free stuff. People's discarded junk, artifacts of their lives thrown online like confessions. I'd laugh at the half-broken exercise bikes, the stained armchairs, the boxes of miscellaneous. It was voyeurism in miniature, a safer way to scratch my investigative itch. Then one night at 2:13 a.m., while eating a gas station tuna sandwich that made my jaw ache with every bite, I saw it. 50-inch LG flat screen, lightly used. The post was barely half an hour old, and the photos, something about them hooked me instantly. They weren't the sterile, too perfect stock photos sellers usually grabbed. They were raw, real. A sagging couch, boxes stacked in a corner, folded laundry in a dim room lit only by a crooked lamp. It didn't feel staged, it felt invasive, like I had slipped into someone's house unseen. The price, $120. Cheap, but not suspiciously so. Exactly in that sweet spot that says, I just want this gone. I felt a tug in my chest. My own TV had died 2 nights earlier, an ancient Toshiba hand-me-down from my cousin, screen cracked and ghosting. Watching Netflix on my half-broken laptop felt more like punishment than entertainment. And here was a replacement practically calling to me. Without letting myself overthink it, I typed, "Hey, I'm interested in the TV. Still available?" I went back to the security feed, checking in a trucker who looked like he hadn't slept since the Bush administration, the smell of diesel clinging to him like second skin. An hour later, my phone buzzed. "Hey, this is Kara from Craigslist. Yeah, it's still available. You can come by tomorrow after 6 if that works." I frowned. The listing hadn't mentioned a name, but plenty of people preferred anonymity online. 7 okay? I wrote. "Sure," came back almost instantly, followed by an address, Willow Terrace Drive. I searched it. A quiet residential street 10 minutes from my place. Tree-lined, cracked sidewalks, single-story homes with yards that looked forgotten but not abandoned. The kind of place you never noticed until you had to. I should have felt something then. A pinch in the gut. A whisper. But instead, I thought about the story of it all. Meeting a stranger, snagging a deal, walking away smarter. I imagined writing about it in some essay I'd never publish. The next day after my shift, I hit an ATM and pulled $140 in 20s, extra, just in case. The sun was still out when I drove into Willow Terrace. The air was thick with summer heat. Kids zipped down the street on bikes. A man mowed his lawn with earbuds in, oblivious. Somewhere close, the smell of lighter fluid and grilling meat clung to the air. Normal. So normal it was dull. Kara's place stood out. Beige siding weathered to gray, porch sagging, yard swallowed by weeds. Not ruined, just tired, neglected, like a house that had been waiting too long for someone who never came back. I parked, slid the bills into my hoodie pocket, walked up. The door creaked open before I could knock. A woman stood there, 30s, messy bun, faded sweatshirt from some nowhere college, leggings, bare feet. She had that tiredness about her, not just physical but in the eyes, like she hadn't really slept in weeks. "Hey, you must be Alex," she said. I stiffened. My name wasn't in the message thread, but maybe I'd used it in my Craigslist profile and forgotten. I nodded. "Yeah, here for the TV. I'm Kara, come in. Sorry about the mess, we're, in the middle of moving." The house swallowed me whole. Dim light, boxes stacked by the walls, couch with no cushions, dust on every surface. But more than that, it was cluttered with electronics. Piles of cords coiled like snakes, stacks of old CRT monitors shoved against the wall, cracked laptops, towers with missing panels, screens everywhere, none of them on. The smell hit me then. Burnt dust faintly sweet like rotting fruit behind plastic. "Wow," I said, trying to sound casual. "Looks like Radio Shack's graveyard." She laughed, but it was a brittle, wrong sound. "Yeah, my brother collects. Hard to get rid of it all." Something in the way she said collects made me falter. My reporter's instinct stirred, uneasy. "It's back in the bedroom," she said, motioning me down the hall. The hallway was narrow, claustrophobic. The carpet was flattened with dark footprints as if someone had been pacing. The air was colder here, unnaturally so. I forced myself forward, ignoring the prickle racing across my arms. She opened the last door on the right. Right in here. The room was empty, 4 walls, drawn blinds. No furniture, no TV. Just blank space that smelled faintly metallic, like blood wiped clean. The door slammed shut. I spun, grabbing the knob. It rattled but didn't turn. "Kara?" My voice was too high, too tight. "What the hell is this?" No answer, just muffled voices through the wood. Hers, sharp and urgent. A man's, low, clipped, almost mechanical. I pounded the door. "Open it, I swear I'll call the cops." I grabbed my phone, no signal, not a single bar. My chest clamped tight. I turned to the window, clawed at the latch. It was painted shut, solid, useless. I forced myself to breathe, think. I opened the alarm app, set it to the loudest siren, cranked the volume. The phone screamed, a high-pitched wail that shook my skull. I tossed it into the far corner, then pressed myself against the wall by the door. Footsteps thundered down the hall. The knob turned. The door creaked open. A man stepped in, tall, broad, hoodie shadowing his face. His eyes caught me, and for an instant I swore they weren't reflecting the light. They were swallowing it whole. He lunged toward the phone, screaming in the corner. I bolted, slammed my shoulder into his ribs. He grunted, staggered, but his hand clawed at the air just inches from my shirt. I shoved past him, running blind down the hallway. Kara stepped out of the living room, arms raised. "Wait," she called. I ducked under, shoved her aside, stumbled over a box, caught myself, didn't stop. The front door flew open, porch boards groaning as I barreled across them. My car. My hand shook so hard I dropped my keys twice before stabbing the ignition. The engine roared, tires screeched. In the mirror, they stood together on the porch. Watching, not chasing, just watching. I didn't breathe until I hit the lights of a gas station. I ran inside, begged the cashier to call the cops. When they arrived, I spilled everything. Kara's name, the address, the Craigslist post. We drove back. The house was dark, curtains drawn, silent, empty. A neighbor shuffled out, squinting in the flashing lights. That place? Nobody's supposed to be there. Owner's gone all week. Business trip. Craigslist post? Deleted. Kara's number? Disconnected. My phone, the one I'd thrown? Gone. The cops shrugged. Scammers, happens. Lucky you got out. But they hadn't seen his eyes. Eyes that drank in light instead of reflecting it. Eyes that felt like they'd already memorized me. I didn't sleep well that night, not with the glow of the new television humming faintly from across the room. I hadn't even turned it on, but somehow it gave off a presence, like a breathing thing in the corner. Every time I stirred awake, I felt my eyes drifting toward it, expecting something. Movement, a shadow, a flicker. Nothing came, only the cold black mirror of the screen, reflecting back a warped version of my own bedroom. By morning, I convinced myself it was paranoia, leftover nerves from Kara's house. That place had been a nightmare, every hallway full of old electronics stacked like tombstones, cables snaking like veins across the floor. The way the man's eyes seemed to drink in the light, the way Kara smiled too long, her lips never quite matching the warmth of her tone. It had all burned itself into me. But this was different, I told myself. The TV was just a TV. I'd tested it the night before, hooked it up, flipped through channels. It worked, grainy but functional. Nothing supernatural about a little static. Still, I couldn't shake the unease. That afternoon, while nursing a cup of coffee, I noticed something odd on the Craigslist page. The ad for the free TV, must pick up tonight, was gone. Vanished. Replaced instead by a new post. Vintage laptop, works great, free. No picture of the laptop, just a blurry photo of the same unkempt living room I'd stood in 2 nights ago. My stomach dropped. Kara was still at it. I wanted to close the page, shut the laptop, and walk away, but something inside me, part instinct, part leftover journalist's curiosity, pulled me deeper. I searched her number, the address she'd given me, every detail I could remember. Nothing came up. No trace of Kara or the man. It was as if they only existed through those ads. That night, the TV turned on by itself. I woke to a soft buzz, the kind of static hum that pulls you from sleep. The screen glowed faint gray, snow drifting across it, but layered inside the static were flickers, faces, shapes, blurred figures that vanished the second I focused on them. My heart hammered, yet I sat frozen on the edge of my bed, staring. Then I saw one clearly. A woman, mid-30s, pale, her hair tangled. She was screaming, though no sound came through, her mouth wide with terror before the static swallowed her again. I tore the plug from the wall. The screen stayed on for 3 long seconds after. That was when I realized the truth. It wasn't a television. At least not in the way I understood them. The following days blurred together. Work was impossible. I kept checking Craigslist, refreshing the page like an addict. Each time there was a new item. A printer, a tablet, a bundle of old cameras free. Always free, always bait, and always the same background. The house. Sometimes I thought I saw movement in the photos. A figure standing far back in the frame, blurred but present. I didn't tell anyone. Who could I tell? That I'd picked up a cursed TV from a Craigslist ad? That it showed me people trapped inside static? My friends would laugh. My coworkers would tell me to get some sleep, so I dealt with it alone. One night, as I sat in front of the dark screen, daring it to flicker, I thought about my old life as a reporter. I'd covered crime, corruption, messy cases of fraud and theft. I had prided myself on my ability to sniff out lies, to read danger before it struck. That arrogance was what had driven me into Kara's house in the first place. And that arrogance was why I couldn't let it go. I needed proof. So I set up my phone to record the TV, left it rolling through the night. In the morning I found hours of static, except for one moment. At 3:12 a.m. the screen lit up with a face. Not a stranger this time. Mine. I was asleep in bed, tossing restlessly. The angle was wrong. It wasn't my phone recording me. It was another camera, a hidden one. And somehow the feed was being broadcast through the TV. That was the moment I stopped being curious. That was the moment I got scared. I ripped apart the TV looking for a camera, some explanation. Inside I found nothing but dust and wires. Yet when I plugged it back in, the feed returned. Me, in my apartment, sleeping, eating, pacing. Always from slightly different angles, as if cameras had been planted in places I hadn't found. I tore through my apartment like a maniac. Checked the vents, the smoke detector, the corners of every room, nothing. No lenses, no wires. Still, the feed continued. Kara and the man weren't just collectors. They were watchers, hunters. And I was their newest exhibit. The breaking point came a week later. I woke to static again, but this time, no faces in the blur. Instead, text. White letters cutting through the gray. Look behind you. I froze. My breath stuck in my throat. Slowly, I turned. Nothing was there. When I looked back, the text had changed. Not yet. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't sleep the next either. Paranoia ate me alive. I taped over the TV. I wrapped it in blankets, shoved it into my closet. But the glow seeped out anyway, faint static hissing through the dark like whispers. The last straw was Craigslist. One evening while scrolling, I saw a new ad posted under Kara's account. Free TV, works great, must pick up tonight. Only this time the photo wasn't of Kara's house. It was my apartment. The TV in the photo was mine, wrapped in blankets, shoved into the closet. And standing just behind it, blurred but visible, was me. That was last night. As I write this now, the TV has turned itself on again, louder than before. I can see my living room on the screen, the exact angle from where I'm sitting. My own terrified face stares back at me, hands trembling over the keyboard. I think I finally understand. Kara and the man weren't luring people for money or possessions. They were building something, a collection of lives trapped in their machines, broadcast to whoever dared to look. And now I'm one of them. If you're reading this, stay off Craigslist. Don't trust the free ads. Don't bring home what doesn't belong to you, because sooner or later, you'll see your own face staring back at you from the static. I wasn't even looking for a car when it started. That's what I tell myself now, over and over, as if reminding myself of that single truth can explain away everything that followed. If I hadn't opened Craigslist, if I hadn't dialed that number, if I just waited a few more weeks until Jake's birthday and bought something safe from a dealership, then maybe none of it would have seeped into my life the way it did. But the mind doesn't work in neat if, then statements when you're staring down a memory you can't fully trust. All it gives you are fragments, jagged edges, flashes of light and shadow that don't line up the way they should. Jake had been relentless. He shoved DMV forms under my nose while I drank coffee, rattled off fuel efficiency stats like flashcards, left tabs open on my laptop of used sedans with odometers I didn't even know could run that low. He was 17, about to turn 18, responsible in every way that counted. Good grades, steady part-time job, not the type to sneak out or mouth off. I knew he'd earned it. Maybe I even wanted to prove to myself that I could still give him something, despite how thin money had stretched after the divorce. Maybe I wanted him to look at me the way he used to, like I had answers instead of debts. So when I saw the ad, something in me clicked. 2004, Honda Accord, silver, 68,000 miles, $30,500. The photos weren't polished. No bright showroom, no angled filters. Just a car in a dirt driveway, leaves caught under the tires, light falling uneven across the hood like a real car you might park outside your own house. I stared at it longer than I should have, longer than the photos deserved. That's when I called. "Yeah, this is Rick." His voice was low, gravelly but calm, with the kind of cadence that makes you lean closer without realizing. He said the car belonged to his daughter who'd moved out west. He said he'd just put new brakes on it. He said it ran like a dream. Every word sank into me, heavy, convincing. We agreed to meet the next afternoon. I didn't tell Jake. I wanted it to be a surprise, something he could brag about to friends, something that would make me feel like a mother who still provided, still delivered. I stuffed the cash deep into my jacket pocket the next day and drove out of town under a sky heavy with clouds, swollen like wet wool. The farther I drove, the narrower the roads became. Asphalt cracked, painted lines fading into nothing, woods pressing closer until I felt the car was tunneling through them. By the time I passed the bent green sign with Red Hill stenciled in peeling letters, my phone had lost service. Still, the directions matched. The gravel drive curved uphill through a wall of trees, ending at a sagging two-story house. Paint peeled from the siding. The porch leaned like it had given up holding its own weight, windows dulled with grime. But the address matched. No Honda in sight. Just a rotting green pickup tucked beneath a carport. One tire bald, another clearly scavenged from a different make. I told myself maybe the Accord was out back, or maybe Rick was still driving it. But my stomach felt tight, as though my body already knew what my mind refused to name. There was no doorbell, only a brass knocker shaped like a lion's head. I raised it and let it fall. The sound thudded into the house like it was swallowed. I waited. Knocked again. Nothing. That's when I called the number. From inside, faint and muffled, a ringtone answered. I froze. The sound was small but unmistakable, bleeding from the dark belly of the house. For a second I thought maybe Rick had stepped out for groceries. Maybe he'd left his phone inside. But the ringtone grew clearer, closer, until I could almost place it in the front room. I cupped my hands to the glass. The curtains sagged, half pulled. Inside, dim, stale air thick with dust. Furniture cloaked in yellowed sheets. Newspapers stacked in towers that threatened to topple. And there, sunk into an armchair facing the television, was a figure. It was slouched, draped in a faded hoodie, head bent at a crooked angle. The skin, or what looked like skin, was too pale, drained of anything human. The eyes were open, glazed, fixed on nothing. My first thought was mannequin. It had to be. People decorate with stranger things, don't they? But something in me whispered otherwise. The tilt of the head, the weight of the body sagging into the cushions. It was too much like a person whose bones no longer had the strength to hold them upright. I staggered back, pulse hammering. I circled the side of the house, as if proving to myself there was nothing more to see. That's when I noticed the garage door cracked open. Inside, the light was dim, but I could make out neat, ordered rows. Car parts stacked like surgical instruments. Doors, bumpers, mirrors, each tagged with dates. The floor gleamed unnaturally clean, as though scrubbed to erase something. Not the chaos of a mechanic's space, a showroom, a collection. Still no Honda. I turned to leave, but movement pulled my gaze. Through the back window in the dim light stood another figure, upright this time, still, facing away. I tapped the glass. Nothing. The shape did not sway, did not breathe. The silence pressed against my eardrums until I felt sure I'd hear a whisper if I waited long enough. A gust of wind swung the back door open an inch, hinges creaking like an invitation. Cold air poured out, carrying the scent of mildew and something metallic, something that reminded me of rust but sharper. And then the ringtone again, deeper inside now, echoing faintly through the hollow rooms. It cut off. The blinds at the front window snapped shut, fast, deliberate, like a hand slamming a trap. My body moved before my mind caught up. I bolted across the gravel, fumbled keys into the ignition, peeled down the drive with stones spitting behind me. I didn't stop until I reached the highway, chest heaving, eyes slicing the rearview mirror again and again, certain that old green pickup would lurch onto the road behind me. It never did. That night I couldn't stop replaying it. The chair with its slumped body, the blinds snapping shut, the orderly garage. I told myself it had to be mannequins, taxidermy maybe, something explainable. But the explanation collapsed each time I tried to hold it. Because it wasn't just what I'd seen. It was how the air had felt inside that place. Dense, suffocating. Like standing too close to a turned-off engine, still radiating heat. The next morning, against my better judgment, I went to the police. I told them everything except the part about the pale body. I couldn't bring myself to say it out loud. The officer typed while I spoke, his face unreadable until I mentioned the ad vanishing the second I drove away. "You'd be surprised how often we get calls like this," he said, eyes flicking up. "Craigslist, fake meetups. Sometimes it turns out worse." "Worse?" I asked. He didn't answer. Days passed. I tried to fold myself back into routine. Work, bills, dinners Jake mostly ignored in favor of his phone. But every quiet moment slid back to that driveway. Every silence threatened to hold another faint ringtone. Then came the call. A detective's voice on my voicemail. The house was vacant, confirmed by bank records. Rick didn't exist. No vehicles were registered there. The green pickup was gone. But in the basement, hidden behind a panel, they found photographs. Dozens of them. Grainy, disposable camera snapshots of strangers standing at that porch. Some smiling, some nervous, some caught off guard. One photo showed a man circling the house, caught mid-step on the gravel. Another showed me. The detective's voice lingered in my ear long after the message ended. I deleted Craigslist that night, but deleting didn't erase the unease. It didn't stop the memory of that figure slumped in the chair, or the second one standing perfectly still. And it didn't stop the thought that the ad hadn't been meant for anyone else. It had been meant for me. Weeks later, I caught myself pulling into a strip mall parking lot, heart racing for no reason I could name. My hands gripped the wheel too tightly, knuckles white, as I realized what had drawn me there. A car. Silver, same make and model, parked crooked near the curb, its hood glinting dully in the light. A man leaned against it, phone in hand, watching. When he looked up, I swear his eyes locked on mine. I drove away before he could move. But even now, some nights when the trees blur past my windows and the road is empty except for me, I hear that ringtone faint in the distance. And I wonder if I ever really left Red Hill at all.